Thank you all so much for coming today to the Salesforce World Tour. Thank you so much for attending this session. We're going to be talking a little bit about Salesforce on Salesforce. We're going to talk about inside sales, how we do that at Salesforce, and we're going to talk about the technology that we use to enable the processes that we have in place. So I'm sure you're tired of seeing this at this point, but I have to. It's a forward-looking statement, so make sure that you're making decisions based on currently available technology, and then a lot of legalese under that. So at Salesforce, we try to embody 4 values in sales development. We want to hire the right people. We want to make sure that teams are aligned with their V2 moms and KPIs. We want to make sure reps ramp as quickly as possible. And then we want to make sure to retain those reps as long as possible and make sure that they're working through a promotion path. Now, for those of you that are wondering what a V2 mom is, that's basically corporate-wide how we make sure that teams are aligned. What is the vision for an organization? What values are you trying to embody? What are the methods that you're going to use to embody those visions? What obstacles are you going to encounter and how do you plan for them? And then how do you measure your success? So that goes all the way from Mark and Keith all the way down to every individual rep. And what that means for a sales organization is everyone is on the same page as to what they're looking to do, what they're looking to achieve, and how they're going to determine whether they have achieved it or not. So it's a very large organization if you think about the global annual scale. Our SDRs, sales development reps, and our BDRs, business development reps, consist of almost more than 1,200 reps. They churn through about 1 million leads every year. They make almost 8 million calls, and they have about 2 million conversations. Now, that is quite a big difference, right? 2 million conversations versus 8 million calls. The game of inside sales is how do you make fewer calls and have more conversations and better conversations. Because it's no longer just about the numbers that you're getting through in a day. It's about making sure that those numbers make sense and that those numbers pay off. So what this means for our Salesforce as a company is that the inside sales organization, the SDRs and the BDRs, actually drive 1/3 of new business revenue on an annual basis. It's one of the top channels for us for those net new logos coming in. And we like to make sure that leads come in and are talked to and nurtured in a way that makes sense for who they are as leads. That's why at Salesforce we have 3 segments that we break things down into. We have enterprise, so those are companies with over 3,500 employees. Most reps and BDRs in this segment will have named accounts. So you work on 1 account all year, or you work on 2. Then we have commercial, so that's anything from 200 to 3,500. And here you focus as a rep and as a BDR on geographic areas and vertical territories. So maybe you're in financial services, or maybe you're in HLS. And then finally, we have SMB. Those are the small and medium companies. That's everything from 1 to 200. And again, like in commercial, our reps are broken down into geographies and vertical territories. And we use that segmentation to also align the inside sales organizations. So wherever a lead comes from, it hits either an SDR or a BDR. And we'll get into the more technical definition between the two in a second. And then both of those organizations actually create qualified opportunities that then feed into the account executives that live in these 3 segments. And of course, hopefully, those conversations, those opportunities lead to closed deals and ultimately customer success. Now, the difference between BDRs and SDRs is fairly straightforward in inbound versus outbound. SDRs, if you ever call 1-800 no software, the first person you're going to talk to is an SDR. Now, these guys handle the inbound lead follow-up, so the 1-800 no software, the chat bot at the beginning of the page. They qualify opportunities and then they move them off to the account executive. It's the account executive's role to take those, then move them down the stages. Business development reps are a little bit more senior. They're more tenured. They're still they're aligned with actual sales teams. So they're driving not just to the general Salesforce criteria for success, but a specific regional vice president's number. So they're contributing to the quota, they're contributing to the ACV targets for that year. They create new business as well. They're outbound prospectors that focus on new business or cross-sell of existing business. And we move the BDRs into the AE track. And we'll talk about compensation in just a bit as well. Now, this is a unnecessarily complicated slide, but the gist is, if an inbound lead comes through 1-800-NO-SOFTWARE or the chat, it goes to an SDR. If it comes in from anything else, so all of you as leads today from the World Tour event, from our webinars, from any kind of other interaction, you go through a marketing automation determined rules of engagement. Depending on your company size, depending if we've talked to you before or not, depending what segment you're part of, you go either to a BDR or an SDR, then they work through that lead, and then, of course, move that onto an opportunity. The ultimate goal for both of these organizations, no matter the segment that they're working on, is moving things into opportunities. Now, in our SDR organization, did my clicker just die? No, excellent. In our SDR organization, the target is 60-minute average response time. So from the first time a lead comes into the website or comes into a form, we want to make sure that we are reaching out within 60 minutes. And then for a politely persistent cadence to continue. So you get a call and email on day 1, day 3, day 5, day 12, day 19. And then if we still haven't managed to get you on the phone or determine what your business need is, what your challenge is that we're trying to solve, then we put you into a marketing nurture. Our leaders think that a fast no is just as valuable or more valuable than a slow yes. So we want to make sure that we're not just cranking through the same 100 calls in a day, but actually trying to understand whether or not you want to engage with us. And that translates into really solid KPI expectations. For SDRs in FY18 and FY19, you can see that's 60 calls a day in the last year that they have to make. And they actually have to attain ACV, so closed deal value of $60K per month in order to hit their quota. So these teams are still trying to drive to quota. And every year we get more aggressive. Obviously, our growth targets get more aggressive, our growth goals. And so our teams have to step up. And that's why in a second we'll talk about the technology, because if you're still one single human, and unless we've figured out cloning while I was asleep last night, I don't think that's happened. If you're still one person, the only way to make more calls or to do more things in a day is to make sure that the tools that you're using are as streamlined as possible so that that process becomes seamless. The reason that is so important is our VPs think of it as speed to lead, right? The fundamental theorem of SDR speed. Fast plus early plus soon gets you the maximum ACV off of every deal. So speed to lead, the faster you call in a new lead, the more probability you have of actually turning that into an opportunity. The earlier in that cadence, so day 1, 2, 3, 19, the earlier you get someone on the phone in that process, the more likely they are to convert to an opportunity. And then finally, the sooner you can give that to an AE, when you condense that SDR time, that's when you're also going to maximize your conversion. And so what we want to do in order to make sure that everyone is aware of their KPIs, but also capable of hitting them, is we have the uniform accountability model. Now, all of our SDRs are generalists. They know a little bit about all the products. They can speak to all the products. They're not weighed down by just one single knowledge silo, which means that you're not playing a game of being transferred from person to person, and you're not having to bear the, oh, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you about that. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you about that game. So we make sure that every single team, no matter what they're covering, no matter what segment, or within the segments, every single team has the same quota. Each SDR has the same quota. We give the same number of leads per SDR, so whether you are covering Kansas or you're covering all of the West Coast, you're going to get the same number of leads. We're going to make sure that that routing happens equally. And then, of course, that all of those leads are equal quality. We depend on marketing automation to make sure that the leads are properly nurtured and then qualified before we move them into the sales conversation. And finally, we want to make sure that they're equal lead types. So you might get a sales cloud, a marketing cloud, and a service cloud, not just one big batch of a specific thing. So again, that leads back to that generalization model. And what that lets us do is provide uniform accountability. If everyone has the same inputs, we're going to expect the same outputs. You have equal opportunity, you have equal expectations, and you have the same standards. So input and output, all the same, regardless of where you are, and we manage the patches so that that can all happen. Now, the BDRs, as I mentioned, they are technically the expert prospectors. So these guys are focusing on outreach. They, if they know what the account is, they can call into that account. If they know how to do social prospecting, they can focus on that. Some of our BDRs are assigned to really big accounts, right? They're maybe assigned to just one account for a year. And that means they will call into all the different business units. So maybe something in enterprise, right, where you're trying to get into different areas of the same organization. But they find the ACV. They don't wait for it to come in. They also have really aggressive development metrics. So we have dashboards that we call the AMP dashboards because activities plus meetings equals pipe. So again, it's a concept of focusing on inputs and outputs. If you're expected to make 40 calls a day and you're making 7 connects a day and you've got 15 meetings scheduled a month, we can expect a certain amount of monthly output. So that's the ACV number, the pipeline number, and the number of opportunities. Now, it's not just about the number of opportunities because you don't want every call to be turned into an opportunity. That doesn't make sense, and it doesn't add value. What you want are qualified opportunities that have been taken to a certain stage in the sales process and then passed off as legitimate business opportunities. And then we want to make sure that we are giving them the tools to succeed with these inputs and these outputs. So every week, our BDRs have prospecting skills training. Every month, we do product and buyer persona training, so making sure you understand what you're talking about and who you should be talking to and what those people that you're talking to care about. And finally, we do call coaching sessions, so managers will actually listen in twice a month to the BDR's calls and making sure that they're having the right conversations in the right frame. So I talked about compensation earlier. Like I said, one of the values is retaining top talent. It's really a lot more difficult to onboard sales reps if you're starting from scratch. So how do you make sure that the people that you're hiring, they embody the values of Salesforce or your company, and then you keep them as long as possible without having that churn? So we actually have a sales development academy. You come in as an associate, essentially an intern for 3 to 6 months into Salesforce. That lets you get your feet wet. You start understanding the company, you start understanding the products a little bit, you start getting a sense of what we're talking about before we give you a quota to start attaining. After the associate stage, you move into being an SDR. So you stay here for about 10 to 12 months. And again, this is the inbound lead. You make sure that you're refining your talk track. You make sure you're learning more about the product before you move into BDR. Because now you've gained those prospecting skills, we want you to put them into action. We want continually to make sure that all the muscles that you've trained are being utilized. So just because you're not an SDR anymore, doesn't mean you're never going to have to do some cold calling. So even in AE land, so that's after the BDR space, you're going to be expected that if you haven't had enough leads come in that day, go out and find your leads, go out and find your ACV. So it's that great progression from SDR to BDR, and then you become an account executive and you move up the actual segments of the company. So you go from SMB to commercial to GB and then enterprise. Compensation, again, we try to keep it all, we keep it all very standard, very level. For SDRs, it's 75% fixed base pay and 25% commission. It's based on bookings performance. So again, we encourage not flipping as much as possible, but flipping the quality, because you're going to get commission whether or not that deal closes. And then for BDRs, it's 65% fixed, 35% commission. Again, towards that seniority, towards that you have more skills, you can actually go out and find the deals yourself, so we expect more of you. And then, of course, we have the one-off scenarios, so spiffs and contests, things like that. We have, with the SDRs, we have call blitzes. We have days where, great, okay, here's a new list of leads. Just call down everyone as quickly as possible. pizza parties happen, the bell gets rung, all of that. We want to make sure that the behavior reflects the process and the product. We don't want behavior based on what you think you're going to get out of the system. And so we try and make it a little bit hard to game the system, right? It's not just about, oh, I heard the first ringtone, great, I'm going to put the phone down and make the next call, make the next dial. We use technology to make sure that we're enforcing all of that. And then, of course, the spiffs and contests are also aligned internally with our current sales programs. So if, let's say, there is a general company push for a particular new product, or a new product has been announced, like high velocity sales, then we want to make sure that our SDRs and our BDRs are focusing on that, and the alignment happens there as well. Like I mentioned, technology is key. There is the old saying of 20 years ago, if it's not in Salesforce, it didn't happen. All of our managers, all of our leaders look at metrics in Salesforce and in Einstein Analytics. And so if you don't input your information and it doesn't make it into that final dashboard, you're not going to get comped on it. That's not going to count towards your activity quota. It just doesn't exist. I actually used to be in sales. I was a sales engineer, and every Friday was the worst time because I would be sitting there inputting all of my notes and all of my activities from all the demos I did that week, because I knew I might not like it, but that's what we look at and that's what we report on. So leaders track things like activities, meetings, and pipeline. This is what they use for forecasting as well. They look at the health of the pipeline, and they use Einstein Analytics to determine trends. So they want to make sure that they are putting the emphasis in the right areas. We also use dashboards to onboard new hires. Are you hitting quota? Where are you potentially struggling? Is it in a particular activity? Is it with a particular type of lead? So we can make sure and coach our reps through that. And then for the reps, technology allows them to actually do effective prospecting. They have the infamous 360-degree view of the customer, so they know everything that's gone on, everything that marketing has done for the lead before they even get them. They have all of the information about the opportunity as well. We can track that power of 7 cadence, so that 7-step, see where things break down if they do, what's most effective, and how do we then continue to refine and optimize that cadence. And we have tools for them, things like Lightning Dialer, things like high velocity sales that actually let you go through your day in an efficient, in a focused manner. And so as we were going through all of this, and we were learning from ourselves and learning from our customers as to how inside sales really works, that's where we really decided to bring to life high velocity sales. So this is a brand new product. We announced it at Dreamforce last year. It is generally available now, as of last month. And this is an entire product that sits on top of Sales Cloud, so it's native to Salesforce, and it's solely designed for the needs of inside sales teams. So you have the ability to create repeatable success with sales cadences. That's how you program in your best practices and make sure that, if you have the best way to follow up after a trade show or the best way to follow up after a web campaign, et cetera, you can build that in, and those cadences automatically run on all of those leads. And that puts all of the to-do items in front of the rep in a work queue. So if you have work queue and it's telling you, great, call Bob and then Jane and then Sally, and you know exactly what to do, whether it's a call or an email or maybe some other kind of task like social prospecting or a nurture campaign. When you work through that on a daily basis, it's telling you what to do and when to do it. So you're not trying to sit there and go, well, this list of leads, maybe I do that first or maybe I do this first. I'm not sure. Like, where do I start? It takes the guesswork out of a daily basis of planning. So you don't need to focus on that. What you focus on instead is actually having the conversations and actually trying to make that connect as quickly as possible. Einstein lead scoring is built right into this as well. So it prioritizes your leads value to your company at the top automatically. And then we have Lightning Dialer built in. Now, Lightning Dialer is still a separate product, but it is optimized. But the lovely thing about this all being native to Salesforce is whatever telephony solution you're using, if it's integrated into Salesforce, it automatically integrates into high velocity sales, so you don't have to make any additional adjustments for that. So that is also how we enable sales organizations. You can manage all your sales activities within Salesforce, so you're not switching between systems. One of my favorite stats that came out last year is that companies on average have 6 systems that each of their reps use on a daily basis. And a rep is expected to complete over 94 activities on a daily basis. And if you have to do 94 activities in 6 different systems, that's a lot of copying and pasting. I was talking to one of our customers last week, and they said that 18% of each of their reps' day is spent just leaving voicemails. So if you can automate that, if you can pre-record voicemails, if you can put the tools in place to eliminate that kind of busy work, that's 18% more time spent selling and having those conversations. That's also how you boost productivity. If you're unifying everything in one place, like in high-velocity sales, and you're not moving between systems, then you're not spending time on the minutia of everyday requirements. But of course, as anything with Salesforce, this is all customizable. So you build your own sales process in. You can have as many cadences as you want. It's all built within the Lightning Sales Console framework. So you can bring in components. You can add in additional information. You can bring in third-party data, anything you want there. So with that, I don't know how we do this with a silent disco. But if there are any questions, how about this? I will hang out here. You are more than welcome. Oh, yeah, no. Passing around will be slightly strange. Do we want to do... There's a mic in the back, so if you have questions, raise your hand. And excellent.
I just had a question around the...
I can't hear him, of course.
I just had a question around the balance of leads between inbound and outbound prospecting. Obviously, this is just for inside sales and inbound. Mm-hmm. Do you have a separate team who also operate in a cold call prospecting model, or is it purely inbound and then passed on to the BDRs?
Yeah, so the inbound is just SDRs, and then outbound prospecting, that's just BDRs. So we split that off between the two of them to make sure that they're focused. And then from the technology perspective, high-velocity sales, you can actually use for either, because it's really, if you're sitting behind a screen selling, or you're sitting behind a screen trying to get through a bunch of activities quickly, that works for you.
And just quickly, what split is it?
SDRs versus BDRs? Yeah. So SDRs is, I believe, 600 to 800 globally, mm-hmm. and the rest of that 1,200 reps is the BDRs. Okay. So it's definitely a smaller number because you have some attrition, of course, but we try to convert as many SDRs into BDRs. So.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone else? No? We're great. Okay. Well, I will hang out here. If you do have more questions, thank you so much for coming. Enjoy the rest of the World Tour.